Was so much a common game throughout Europe that when the German and British troops declared a spontaneous truce in no man's land on Christmas morning 1914, they met together in a brief interlude between the horrors of the trenches by playing football. South America was spared most of the traumas of war. The game had been flourishing from the beginning of the century. Football was first seen in Argentina, introduced by British immigrants and sailors in the 1860s. Games then were little more than casual encounters between friends. The first organized match in South America was played on the 20th of June 1867 in Palermo, now a huge park in Buenos Aires. A monument marks the site of the birthplace of Argentinian football and the game in South America. But it wasn't until the 1880s that the game really developed in Argentina. A Scotsman, Alexender Watson Hutton, became headmaster of the English high school in Buenos Aires. He was a keen footballer. He taught his pupils the game and later formed a team. Hutton is still revered as the father of Argentinian football. British influence was strong. From sailors, teachers and railway workers, word of football spread rapidly. The first major club was Alumni, which was managed by Watson Hutton and had the best team in Argentina for 11 years. Alumni beat a South African touring team in 1906, the first victory for South America against overseas opponents. It was a turning point in the history of the game in Argentina. Suddenly, everyone was talking about football. The British were also responsible for introducing the game to Uruguay. In the 1860s, William Leslie Poole, a lecturer at the English High School of Montevideo, started to teach football to his pupils, one of whom, Enrique Lichtenberger, founded the Asociación Uruguaya de Fútbol. The first organized game took place in 1878 in the region of La Blanqueda in Montevideo. On the same field 11 years later, a Montevideo team met a team from Buenos Aires, the start of a fierce footballing rivalry between Argentina and Uruguay that's lasted for more than a century. 1891 brought the formation of the Central Uruguay Railway Cricket Club, later to become Peñarol, and marks them as the oldest club in Uruguay. During the next 25 years, football in South America developed its unique style. Artistry and skill took preference over the more physical European game. Football was booming. Competitions were established, and by 1916, a South American championship was organized in Buenos Aires. Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Chile competed for this trophy. Uruguay were the first winners. Huge crowds watched the following year when the tournament was staged in Montevideo. Despite being dwarfed by Brazil and Argentina, their much larger neighbors, Uruguay triumphed again. Diego Lucero played for Nacional of Montevideo in the 1920s. He understands why football was, and still is, a major part of people's lives in Uruguay.
Firstly, the Latin temperament has produced the skill, creativity and inventiveness necessary for the game. And the fact that the people are very poor means that children have only their football to play with as a toy.
Whatever the reasons, Uruguay were to emerge as the first real superpower of the world game. 5 times South American champions, they finally launched their talents onto the world stage in Paris at the 1924 Olympic Games. saw them was astonished by their amazing skill. Witnessed the birth of the first real star of international football, José Leandro Andrade, the Black Pearl. His skill was the outstanding factor in ensuring Uruguay's success in reaching the final against Switzerland. 10,000 people had to be turned away from the overcrowded stadium. Such was the attraction of the Uruguayans, the first real masters of South American magic. The result, an emphatic 3-0 victory. At home in Montevideo, the team was being proclaimed world champions. In memory of their achievement, this picture of the entire team still hangs in Montevideo's Museum of Football. 4 years later, at the Olympics in Amsterdam, the competition was severely weakened by the absence of most of the top European countries because of arguments about eligibility. But Uruguay were there, and in the final against Argentina, they won 2-1 to retain the Olympic title. But by then, all the talk was of the first World Cup. Jules Rimet, a French lawyer, had become president of FIFA in 1921, a position he was to hold for 33 years. Rimet was dedicated to the idea of organizing a championship outside the Olympics, open to all the footballing nations of the world. With the backing of Henri Delaunay, his friend and colleague from the French Football Federation, the idea turned into reality after FIFA had met in Paris in 1924. 5 years later, FIFA announced that the first competition would be held in Uruguay the following year. Center stage would be Montevideo, the capital city, which rose to the challenge and built a new stadium, the Estadio Centenario, in just 8 months. Lucien Laurent travelled to those finals as a member of the French team. He has vivid memories of the transatlantic boat journey, a trip which took more than 2 weeks.
When we saw the boat arriving, it had 3 decks and a swimming pool on each of them. We couldn't believe what was happening to us. It was like a dream. It really was a dream for us, because going to the Americas was like going to paradise. The crossing was very pleasant, and we were well received when we got there. And then there were all the parties on the boat. But please understand, we had a training session every day. Every morning we exercised on deck, and then did some technical drills in the gymnasium. They were wonderful times when you remember them. Unique. We all wondered if we'd really lived through it all.
When the teams arrived, they found the magnificent new stadium in Montevideo nearing completion. The first World Cup could begin. Sadly, many of the European nations, discouraged by the long journey, declined the invitation. Only 13 teams assembled for the opening ceremony, including a Romanian team personally selected by King Carol. The World Cup trophy, later to be named after Jules Rimet, was designed by a French sculptor. It stood 12 inches high, weighed less than 9 pounds, and was made of solid gold. In the first match, Mexico played France, a special memory for Lucien Laurent.
The match began normally with both teams battling for possession. Suddenly, Delfour attacked down the right and passed to Liberati in the centre. I sped through the middle, connected to the ball on the volley, and scored in the corner of the goal. It was the first goal. Everybody was very happy, but we didn't kiss each other in those days.
It's 60 years since that memorable day, but Lucien Laurent, known to his friends as the Little Cadet, still plays football at home in Besançon at the age of 83. It's ironical that only now the Little Cadet is receiving the recognition he deserves for scoring the first World Cup goal. But France and Lucien Laurent failed to make it to the final. Survivor from the Uruguayan team in the first World Cup final is Emilio Recoba.
El partido con los
The
argentinos.
game against Argentina.
Partido donde ellos
I remember they played so well in the first
bueno
half and
y
took the
salieron
lead.
adelante.
Then, after
Pero en el
half time,
segundo tiempo cambió todo.
everything
completamente.
changed.
Before a 90,000 crowd in the Centenario, Uruguay were favourites to win. Emilio Recoba was a reserve for the captain, Nasazzi, here on the left. Uruguay are wearing the darker shorts. The home team struck first. But by half-time, Argentina had taken a 2-1 lead. The celebrations, however, started with this equaliser for Uruguay. Then suddenly, the Uruguayans were heading for victory. Castro, the one-armed forward, scored a fourth goal in the final minute to make certain the finest hour in Uruguayan football.
Una alegría muy grande.
We were very happy.
Más de lo que se
It
tenía
was a
que
time of
festejar
great
eso.
celebration because we had two
Imagínense,
Olympic
veníamos de
victories,
dos Olimpiadas,
7
triunfo de
South
dos
American
Olimpiadas,
championships,
con 7 sudamericanos.
and then to win the
Y
first
ganar el primer
World
campeonato del mundo
That's
es
a
un
record.
récord.
It's unknown
Pero
in the
eso que
world.
creo que en el mundo no se conoce. La satisfacción
It's
más
the greatest
grande.
feeling there is.
Es la aspiración más grande que
greatest
puede tener
honor
un
in
jugador de
football.
fútbol.
And so, the World Cup had been born. In Europe, the popularity of the game increased dramatically in the aftermath of World War I. In England, over 200,000 people attended the 1923 Cup final between Bolton Wanderers and West Ham United, the first game at Wembley Stadium. It was far more than the ground had been designed for, and the game got underway with people standing around the edge of the pitch. Football was equally popular in the rest of Europe. Football historian Ludwig Stečević.
Wir haben
In
bereits
1918, we had
1918 mit der
introduced the
Gründung der
8-hour day
Republik den
on the founding of the
8-Stunden-Tag
Austrian Republic.
eingeführt. Also
Before
vorher nur
that,
10,
we
12
used to work
Stunden
10
während
to
des
12 hours
Krieges
a day.
gearbeitet
So,
und
there was a
daher
lot more
viel
leisure time.
Freizeit.
Football
Und Fußball
was the most
war das
popular game.
populärste,
It was cheap
das
and
billigste
easy to
und das
understand.
einfachste auch zu verstehen.
In Vienna in 1923, over 100,000 spectators were attracted to this match between Austria and Italy. Several countries had by now adopted professionalism. Football was flourishing, and the ideas of men of vision were starting to transform the game. Meisel's innovations was a club competition for the best teams in Central Europe. In 1927, the Mitropa Cup was born, although perhaps the conditions in this semi-final left something to be desired. Prague played Viennese club Rapid in the first final, and with the pitch somewhat drier, beat the Austrians comprehensively 6-2 at home. The away match was a formality, and the world's first major international club competition went, and in 1931, at the Ring Café in Vienna, the Wunderteam was born. It was the haunt of Vienna's sports writers, most of whom disagreed with Meisel's team selections. For once, he decided to follow their advice.
Had never been tried. Sindelar was called the man of paper because he was physically very slight. The journalist said, put them together. Sindelar as centre forward and Schwedel as the connecting man. Well, they did. Against Scotland on May the 16th, 1931. And we beat them 5-0.
The new Wunderteam, commemorated in a painting at the Austrian Football Association, was unbeatable for nearly 2 years. They played 12 matches against the best in Europe, winning 10, drawing 2, and scoring 49 goals. They were led by Matthias Sindelar, an elusive and big sternest test, a match against England, who'd never lost to a foreign team at home. This time, not even the magic of Sindelar could bring victory for the Austrians. But it was very close before England won by a single goal, 4-3.
Das Spiel hat international vielleicht das größte Echo hervorgerufen. Die Engländer haben in ihrer Domäne der englische Fußballthron hat gewankt. Ist nicht gefallen, leider.
However, there were other forces stirring in Europe. Italy under Mussolini was a country attempting to make its mark on the world. And one way in which this could be achieved was through the medium of sport. When Italy was awarded the 1934 World Cup, it was seen as a great opportunity to boost the nation's standing. To face Czechoslovakia under the glare of Il Duce. The Czechoslovak captain that day was their goalkeeper, František Planička.
The atmosphere was wonderful. We were all looking forward to playing. When we won our place in Italy, we wanted to do our best to achieve the best result for all the people at home. We tried very hard. However, the referee, Mr. Eklund from Sweden, was seen in Mussolini's box before the match. He was there for a long time. He was given directives by him. He was told what to do and what not to do. And we were the victims.
These accusations have never been proven, and Czechoslovakia actually took the lead midway through the second half through a goal from Antonín Puč. There were only 7 minutes left when Italy equalized through Raimundo Orsi. The Italian team were unassailable. In 1935, they played Austria in Vienna and discovered a new star. Silvio Piola scored both goals as Italy beat the once mighty Austrians 2-0. He was to become the most feared forward of his day. The game was also a triumph for Italy's technical director, Vittorio Pozzo.
Di Vittorio Pozzo un gran bel ricordo, perché è stato un uomo, oltre ad essere un tecnico, è stato un uomo buono di animo, ha cercato sempre di incoraggiare i giocatori anche in momenti. Io non posso che giudicarlo molto bene.
Pozzo was born in Turin, but his ideas on football were based on his experiences in England before the First World War. On his return, he found himself involved in running the national team, becoming full-time technical director in 1920 amateur team to the Berlin Olympics, and Pozzo's psychology worked again. They won the gold medal. But the map of Europe was changing rapidly. In 1938, Austria ceased to exist as a sovereign state when it was annexed by the Third Reich. The Anschluss covered all aspects of life. When the Germans played Switzerland in the opening match of that year's World Cup in France, they included 5 members of the now defunct Austrian team. Not that it did them any good. In a replay, the Swiss scored 4 times to eliminate them. The favourites were, yet again, Italy. Viola was now at his peak, and Italian pride. Then, clad entirely in black, they played the hosts, France. In the semi-final, their opponents were Brazil. Brazil were the only South Americans in France, and in Leonidas da Silva, they had one of football's most skillful exponents. Against Poland, he'd displayed his talent for the first time in Europe and scored 4 times. But just as they were astute in attack, so Brazil were naive in defense. Wilimowski scored 4 for Poland in reply, as one of the World Cup's most remarkable games. The Hungarians were led by George Sharoshi, a doctor of philosophy, but they weren't clever enough for the Italians. Colossi took only 6 minutes to put the champions ahead. Hungary replied within a minute, as Titkos was left unmarked in the Italian penalty area. Italy hadn't lost to Hungary for 13 years, and they proceeded to pull Hungary's defense apart. Viola scored the second. Then Colossi added another to make the score 3-1 at the interval.